The GOP now scaling back the Jacksonville event next month over a spike in coronavirus cases in Florida. Some changes include the first 3 days being limited to delegates only and more use of outdoor venues. Meanwhile, the Democratic National Committee urging lawmakers not to go to Milwaukee for this year's DNC. Joining me right now is Georgia Congressman, member of the House Judiciary Committee, Doug Collins. And Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Welcome.
Good morning, Maria. It's good to see you as well.
Let's first talk about the convention. Are you planning on going? What's the story? Because these spikes in coronavirus have a lot of people concerned.
At this point, we're planning on going. But look, Maria, if I was a Democratic lawmaker, I wouldn't want to go to Milwaukee either. I wouldn't want to be seen with Joe Biden in the basement in Delaware or in Milwaukee. I mean, with the plans and the processes he has for the upcoming in the United States, what he wants to impose, I would want to run from it as far as I could, too. But look, whatever we have to do in Florida to make people safe, to limit it, this is what good governance looks like. This is what the president's provided his leadership in the RNC convention. We're going to make sure people are safe and that there's going to be an opportunity for him to speak and talk about the accomplishments of his 3.5 years. Look, there'll be no doubt about it that they're going to be on full display, the president being able to talk to the American people about what he's accomplished. And if I was a Democrat, I'd want to run away from my convention, too.
Well, there certainly is a lot for the president to discuss in terms of what he has gotten done, but the investigatory powers have also been fired up against him the entire first term, Congressman. So talk to us about that.
Well, it's amazing. I don't think there's ever been a president in history who's had to deal with a constant 3.5-year battle from the left and from the Democrats, from Pelosi and Schumer and everybody, from even before, and even the deep state of when you actually start about Comey and Strzok and McCabe and Brennan and Clapper, all the way into the Oval Office with President Obama and Joe Biden, by the way, who started well before he even was sworn in, attacking him as a candidate, then trying to disrupt the start of his presidency, then constantly trying to protect a Mueller investigation that was a complete flop and went nowhere. And then you had this past 18 months where I've had to stand against Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff, who just make up things because they don't like this president. So he's had to overcome that. But also, Maria, why he's had to overcome that? We've passed the trade agreements with Mexico and Canada. We've implemented a tax plan that for our American citizens and our businesses that jump-started our economy and has it growing. And now he's leading through the COVID virus, and we're going to see that on display. But he's overcome the left trying to defeat him. He'll defeat them again in November.
Yeah, the president will also talk about some 200 judges that he's placed as well. I know that that's something that he's talked about as one of his major accomplishments. But there's this big debate right now over masks and whether or not we are seeing the lawmakers and the powers that be stop us from our rights. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is suing Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms over the city's mask law, stating she's exceeding her authority over a mask mandate, Congressman. This is coming a day after the banned local governments from requiring citizens to wear masks. So why such a fight over masks?
It's become political. And especially with Mayor Bottoms here in Atlanta. You know, she's so focused on masks and other things, and the governor has already mandated that everybody, you know, in what he said, be smart. Use your common sense. When you're out, use your mask, be a part of that. And private businesses, Walmart, Kroger, I know others have said, we want you to wear a mask when you're in our business. That's the way it should be. Mayor Bottoms is so focused on masks as a political issue and auditioning for a vice president slot that she's not even running her own city. Why don't Mayor Bottoms, instead of focusing on mandating masks, which, by the way, her own law enforcement can enforce anyway, why don't she help her law enforcement take back control of the city and fight against a DA who is actually persecuting Atlanta police officers and going after them without even investigation or grand jury, charging them with murder when he didn't even want to hear their side? I think Mayor Bottoms has got her priorities a little bit backwards, and the governor's fighting back, saying, we're handling this situation. Mayor Bottoms, run your city. The governor will run the state.
Do you think some of the president's critics want their cities closed going into the election? They want this recession to just be elongated? I mean, is it that bad? We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we can't even get the truth and honesty. We have to just deal with these politics?
We do, unfortunately. Maria, how many times have we talked about this? I mean, it was, the Democrats have not wanted to govern in the last 18 months. We spent the vast majority of our time in the Judiciary Committee investigating the president and going after, these sham impeachments and these hearings that went nowhere. I mean, do I have to remind you of John Dean in the crap of the 70s? Do I have to remind you of Steve Cohen bringing a bucket of chicken to one of the committee rooms? Look, the Democrats are not serious about this. All they have had is November 2020 on their mind. They just want to beat this president because they think if they get the presidency back and they do these things, then we can go back and change things. They have a failed candidate in Hillary Clinton. They've got a failed candidate in Joe Biden, and they have failed policies that nobody in America is buying. If I was them, I'd try to throw out theatrics as well because nobody's buying their substance.
Well, this is pretty extraordinary, actually. Let me bring in Joseph Pinion. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, obviously, Congressman, I think to your point, I think obviously there was a drumbeat to basically disempower President Trump for the better part of 3 years. How do you get, the American people to focus on how we have a post-COVID-19 economy that works for all people, particularly when, again, you've got, basically a third of Americans unable to pay their mortgage in July and a quarter of people here in New York unable to pay their rent going back since March?
Well, two things in that. Number one, I think the president's starting that already. He did it in Atlanta the other day when he was announcing how we're going to cut through deregulation so we can get our economy started with infrastructure projects and other things. But also look at what you're talking about in New York and the shutdown effect that has happened in those areas, and the economy's not growing. In Georgia, we've had our share of the pandemic episodes down here, but our economy is back growing, and many parts of our state is back. In fact, I've had businesses that are actually better than they were last year in some of their business. People are wanting to get out and do it safely. But what we've got to do is focus entirely on what we have done. The economy that was growing before the pandemic. We've got to also be able to do probably another package that helps our small businesses, make sure that they're able to stay in business, and do the things that get people off unemployment and back to work. That's a focus message that this president, I believe, can handle over the next, a little over 109 days as we go into this election. But focusing people on what we can be and looking up and being optimistic and not having these continuations of a doomsday scenario where everybody's going to be set in and nothing is going to happen. That is simply a determination that these governors and these in some states and mayors have said that we're going to keep this as an issue because we believe right now that as long as we are in control, we get control of the narrative. The president's going to have a chance over the next 3 months to actually control that narrative of saying what we can do and how we help people. Remember, this is a president who looks across this country and sees nobody that he wants to leave behind. He wants to lift every socioeconomic background, every race background. He wants to lift them up, and he's proven that in his 3.5 years.
So what do you think is most important then for a fourth stimulus package? Or do you want to see something agreed upon before you guys leave again for the August holiday?
Well, if we're going to agree on it, it needs to come with a couple of conditions in my mind. Number one, the unemployment insurance from our perspective is actually, and I had it yesterday, I've talked to several businesses who keep coming to me that we've got to do something about that because we cannot get workers back. We have an economy that's starting to grow again, but they're not coming back to work because they're making more on unemployment with the federal subsidy than they were when they actually were working. That's a strain to business. We got to have liability protections. And then we also have to make sure that our states and locals have the resources they need. But Maria, why has anyone talked about the money that we've already sent out to these locales but had constricted how they were able to spend them? Why don't we free that up so that they can actually spend those money in places that the states and localities need, instead of Washington doing the top-down approach again of just throwing money at certain areas and saying, let's use what we've already had and make sure it's being used properly.
Yeah, well, we are about 2 weeks away from the end of that $600 a week program. The unemployment benefits, we'll see what happens after that July 31st deadline comes and goes. Congressman, it's wonderful to see you as usual. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Maria. You have a great day. Have a great weekend.
And to you, Congressman Doug Collins there.